Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate build guide. Today we're covering a build for Minsc, the Mad Rashemar. So I've gotten this question a lot, how do you build Minsc? Because by default, he has the worst build of any companion character in Baldur's Gate. His starting stats are incredibly terrible, and they won't do what the character wants to do. So I'm going to go through and talk about a couple builds that we can do which both fill the character's needs and niche and are on flavor for Minsc, as well as being viable for tactician mode. When you get Minsc, he's going to have enough experience to level him up to level 12, whatever level your party is. So we're going to be going through levels 1 to 12, but we're going to be focusing on endgame power rather than focusing on how to level up the character over the course of the 12 levels, because he's going to start at level 12 when you get him. That being said, all of these builds are totally viable to play as main characters, or you could use them for Karlach or Lae'zel very easily, and they would be on theme for those characters as well. So, let's talk about what Minsc actually wants to have. So he's a two-handed Berserker, which means that he should probably have the ability to go Berserk, which he doesn't by default in the game. In older editions of Baldur's Gate, he actually had Rage either as a class kit, think a subclass, or as just a natural ability that Minsc got. He was just able to Rage as a Ranger, even though normally in Baldur's Gate 2, Rangers couldn't do that. So we want to add in that. We want to make sure that he's a strength-based character fighting with a two-handed weapon, and we want to keep him pretty on flavor for his charging in and beating things down attitude. So I'm going to focus him on outputting two-handed damage. I'll be doing two versions of this build, one that uses Ranger and one that doesn't, so if you feel like it's important for him to still be a Ranger, then you can definitely go with the first version, but the second version I think is going to be a little more powerful overall. Alright, let's get started. So first off, we have got to fix this mess. For a strength-based ranger, obviously the default stat setup is nonsense, not to mention he has way too much wisdom for a character that doesn't want to focus on casting. What's this charisma doing here, and so on. So let's fix his ability points. I'm going to clear this and set back down to default, and we're going to make sure that he is focusing on strength and constitution, because he's a giant man, should be tough and able to deal damage. So we're going to grab 14 dexterity for armor class in medium armor and initiative, as well as 16 in both strength and constitution. Our remaining 4 points go to wisdom so that we can still do some ranger spell casting, as well as just having the best save. But you could move these around a little bit if you wanted to. For a main character, maybe you would want more charisma in case you wanted to be able to take a charisma skill. But for the most part, this is going to be the best build for Minsc, stat-wise, for sure. For your favored enemy choices, you start with Mage Breaker, which is fine. We don't want Ranger Knight, which is usually the best of these, because we're not going to be using heavy armor anyways, so we don't particularly care about heavy armor. So we can stay with Mage Breaker. It's on theme for the character, and none of these matter particularly. We do, however, have to change Beast Tamer here. For some reason, Minsc is given Beast Tamer, which lets him find a familiar, but the character always has the unique ability to find familiar for Boo, no matter whether he has the find familiar spell from any other source anyways. So this actually just lets you summon a normal familiar, not summon Boo, and I think Boo would be jealous if we had a second familiar, so let's swap that out. The most on-theme one by far is Wasteland Wanderer for Cold. Since Minsc is from far northern Rashemar, he's going to be very used to the cold. Fire is probably the most powerful of these, just because fire damage is slightly more common than cold damage, but I think we're going to go with Wasteland Wanderer for Cold here. So now we have fixed his ranger levels, and let's get him leveled up. At level 2 Ranger, we probably want to make sure that he can just get into the fights, and the abilities, the damage on his spells will not be very good, so while we could use Hunter's Mark, I probably would just take Enhanced Leap and Longstrider here. This will make sure that he can reach the enemies. Longstrider is great to have on in every party, so you're definitely going to want access to that. For our fighting style, we're going to take Defense, because it's the only one that really matters for a two-handed weapon character. And at Ranger 3, we actually have kind of an interesting choice. So you get to choose your subclass here, And essentially we get to choose between Hunter and Gloomstalker. We're not going to keep leveling up in Ranger, so the Beastmaster Ranger is less useful. Also, again, Minsc already has a companion, so we don't want him to have more companions. The choice here is essentially one between more sustained damage or more initial burst damage. Hunter allows you to take Colossus Slayer, which gives you an extra d8 damage every turn that you are hitting a damaged target. So this is kind of more sustained damage over the course of a fight. It will be basically an extra d8 every turn, which is pretty useful. Giant Killer, I think, is not particularly good because it requires your reaction, which you want to have available for opportunity attacks, and we're going to be getting other uses for our reaction as well. And Hordebreaker, you would rather just have more damage most of the time, so we definitely would want Colossus Slayer if we're taking Hunter. The other option here is to take Gloomstalker, because Gloomstalker gives you extra initiative, which is incredibly important on Tactician mode, extra movement speed, which really fits with Minsk's, gung-ho attitude, where he wants to charge in, and the extra attack on your first turn of combat. Because this is a two-handed weapon character, that extra attack is going to be worth, on average, something like 30 or so damage, so it's going to be an incredible amount of extra damage from the Dread Ambusher attack. I think that I prefer Gloomstalker here, but Hunter is maybe a little more on flavor for Minsc, and both are pretty good. So I will select Gloomstalker, but you can make the choice based on what you think is best here. Probably take Hunter's Mark here, it's just the most likely to come up. 1d6 extra damage, we'll be attacking 3 times in our first round. Maybe we don't have a use for our bonus action, although we will have a use for our bonus action, so what we pick here doesn't matter that much. We're then going to deviate from Ranger, because at this point we've more or less gotten everything that we want from Ranger in terms of the flavor. We've gotten him immune to cold or resistant to cold, and we've given him his Gloomstalker extra attack, so he's getting additional damage, and we're going to go into Barbarian. Barbarian allows us to give him Rage, which is really important for Minsc. That's such a huge component of his character. And also very important is Reckless Attack. This is really useful because we're going to be a two-handed weapon build using great weapon fighting. So since we'll be taking a -5 attack penalty on every attack, the Reckless Attack will allow us to hit much more frequently. And finally, of course, he's a Berserker, so we're going to be taking Berserker as well, because Frenzy is really valuable on this character because we will be doing 10 extra damage on every attack. This will give us 4 attacks in the first round of combat, potentially up to 6 attacks in the first round of combat with Action Surge, because of course we will be going into Fighter as well, and so that's going to be an extra 30 damage per attack. You're going to be bursting, if you hit all your attacks, for something like 180 damage in your opening round of combat. The Enraged Throw is also really nice with the bonus action because it allows you to hurl enemies around, which of course Minsc knocking people over is really important, and if you run up, throw an enemy knocking it prone, and then you gain advantage on your attacks, then you won't have to use Reckless Attack for that, which makes you slightly harder to hurt. If they're prone, of course you get advantage on attacks against them. Having hit level 3 Barbarian, we're going to dip into Fighter. Fighter is really good for the next 6 levels because that gives us 2 feats still, allowing us to increase our strength, because Fighter gets a bonus feat at level 6. Otherwise, we would be having to level up Ranger and Barbarian, which don't get much at level 4, and so Fighter going to level 6 I think is going to be the sort of natural pick here, because we want to be able to get extra attack as well, so we need to make sure that at least one of our classes hits level 5. Of course, we are taking Great Weapon Fighting, which increases the damage output of our weapons. It's especially good to use weapons that have multiple damage dice on Great Weapon Fighting, so you would much rather be rolling 2d6 on a Greatsword than 1d12 on a Great Axe. So because it doubles the chances of you rolling a 1 or 2 and re-rolling it. It's going to be significantly better for your damage output overall. So definitely keep an eye out for Great Swords, specifically for Minsc. It's also the weapon that he comes with and prefers the most is a great sword, so it's on flavor, but also synergizes extremely well with great weapon fighting. Then we get Action Surge, which allows our burst damage to be significantly higher. Here we have another choice of subclass. The kind of natural choice... Oh, let me level up in Fighter here. The natural choice is Champion, because it gives you improved critical hit, and of course you're attacking a lot, and your critical hits will hit for a ton of damage. But I actually think that the best option, as it usually is Battlemaster. The reason for this, in particular for this build, is that Precision Attack allows you to roll a d8 and add it to your to-hit chance, which means that that basically by itself negates the to-hit penalty of attacking with Great Weapon Master, so you're much, much more likely to hit your attacks. So Precision Attack is incredibly useful. Trip Attack will allow advantage on subsequent attacks, and then Riposte gives you something to do with your reaction, whether you're making an opportunity attack for someone leaving or making an opportunity or retaliation attack for someone hitting you. So that gives you a reaction use. You already have bonus action uses from your rage, and so you're making sure you're using both your reaction and your bonus action, which it's important in any build to have a use for every kind of action that you get access to. Here we just take bonus strength. This build will only hit 18 strength, because great weapon fighting is so important to it. We get extra attack here, of course, doubling our attacks. And here we are going to get access to Great Weapon Master, which allows us to take a -5 attack penalty for an additional 10 damage. Since we're going to be making 6 attacks in our opening round from Gloomstalker, this is plus 60 damage a round. It's an enormous amount of additional damage, so it's incredibly important for the build, and the whole setup is around making sure that your Great Weapon Master hits land every time. So this is going to be the best overall damage output, especially initial burst damage for Minsc as a character. One other thing to keep in mind with this build is if you are open to it, you can use either Gauntlets of Giant Strength or the Elixirs of Hill Giant Strength you can drink every morning and set Minx's strength to 20. This allows you to get other feats, which I'll talk about that in the next build, which other feats we want, but also allows you to dump strength completely because you'll have 21 strength all the time. So these items help a lot for this build in terms of making sure that you're hitting your 20 strength and getting the damage out there. So do consider using elixirs for this build because it will significantly improve the damage output of your character, but if you don't want to, 18 strength is totally fine. This build also gets quite good initiative, because of the Gloomstalker initiative bonus, as well as +2 dexterity, and we'll have decent armor class with medium armor and 14 dexterity, though not incredible, but you'll have pretty good HP just because you're taking all high HP classes. You'll have the damage reduction from raging, so you should be okay in terms of not dying, and since you'll be at least instantly killing one enemy every round, pretty much, because you'll charge in and hit them with many attacks, you shouldn't take too much retaliation damage. So that's the build if you want to include Ranger. Let me talk also if you feel like it's not that important to include Ranger and just to make hit the benchmarks that make Minsc, we can do something slightly better. So we're going to build him starting as a fighter. And of course we're taking great weapon fighting weapon style here. The stat spread will be the same. This is usually the stat spread you want for any melee character, so if you are considering just building any melee character, this is the optimal stat spread for those characters almost always. And then we're going to be taking still taking Battlemaster, although again, Champion does give you the extra critical hits, and because you're making all your attacks with advantage, you are quite likely to get some critical hits from Champion. The other advantage of Champion is that you get additional bonus action attacks with when you crit with Champion and when you crit with Great Weapon Master. So Champion makes that more likely. But since you already have a bonus action attack from your Frenzy attack, I think it's less important to have that for your bonus action. But Champion Fighter is also good, especially if you feel like Battle Master is maybe too fiddly for Minsc, because he's a very straightforward man. Take the same maneuvers here. But this time we're going up to... We'll take bonus strength here. Going up to level 8 Fighter and level 4 Barbarian, because that gets us 2 additional feats. So we're going to lose out on the Gloomstalker bonus attack, but we'll gain quite a lot of advantages from additional feats. So let me grab Great Weapon Master here. That's, of course, the most critical one. Fighter level 7, we get 2 extra maneuvers. This is less useful than the level 3 Battle Master abilities, because at this point you have the 3 maneuvers that you're going to be using all the time, but Pushing Attack can be quite useful, and Goading Attack feels pretty on theme for me, so that's the one I like, although any of these are totally fine. Disarming Attack can also be quite useful. Certain enemies will have weapons that you really want to knock out of their hands because they act as defensive tools in some way, and while you do intend to kill in one round pretty much anyone that you start attacking, you can often knock the weapon out of their hand, gaining some kind of benefit against them if they have a weapon that increases their AC, or a weapon that does damage whenever you hit them, something like that. It can be useful to have disarming as well. And finally, at Fighter level 8, we get another feat. So the other feats that I think are really useful to consider here are Sentinel, always good on any melee fighter, because especially if you're operating in a party. Advantage on opportunity attacks is really good. The reaction attack to make a weapon attack against an ally, also really nice. So that one's quite good. If you are using a polearm rather than a great weapon, then Polearm Master is quite powerful, because the opportunity attack when an enemy comes in range is very good. The bonus action to attack with the butt of the weapon is less powerful, because we are going to be using our bonus action to Frenzy attack most of the time. But the additional attack when they enter your range is very good. Mage Slayer is always excellent in this game, because knocking enemies out of concentration can be super important. And finally, the one that I think is most useful here is Savage Attacker. It does have some negative synergy with the Great Weapon fighting weapon style, but it's going to increase your average damage output by like 3 per attack, something like that, with a Great Weapon. And so it's just going to increase your overall burst damage by 20 or so, and that can be an incredibly valuable amount of extra damage. So we can grab that, or Sentinel. Those are the 2 I would most strongly consider, but we just get extra feats with this build, so it's pretty nice to be able to do that. And of course, you can get even more feats. At level 8, we're going to swap to Barbarian. And of course, you can get even more feats if you end up using the elixirs and don't have to spend 2 of your feats on ability score improvements. Then you get 2 additional feats. So you can have, let's say... Oh, no. Whoops. Push the wrong button there, my bad. Let's level up in Barbarian here. We, of course, are still going to go for Frenzy. So, if you aren't using elixirs, you're going to want to max out your strength. If you are using elixirs, there's a number of bonuses that you can get. Alert is super powerful and good on every character, so highly recommend taking that on pretty much anyone, especially because this build doesn't have the bonus initiative from Gloomstalker, so going first is just always really nice. Charger actually is kind of fun for this build. We do have uses for our bonus action, but it lets you close more distance. I wouldn't go for it because it takes an action and a bonus action to use this charge. You get a little extra damage and a little extra distance, but it doesn't give you an extra attack, and we just want to be making as many attacks as possible. Another option here is, so for the 4 feats that we get if we're using elixirs, I would probably choose Alert, Great Weapon Master, Savage Attacker, and Mobile is also pretty good, because you can run into someone, hit them, knock them over, then run somewhere else, so I might pick that, or Sentinel would be the last one, especially if you're operating in a group. Tavern Brawler also has some fun things because you get the bonus action throw with the Berserker, so my suggestion is play around with those feats, especially if you're using elixirs. You'll have 4 feats, and when you stack up a lot of feats on a fighter-type character, it's going to be very powerful. But if you are just building this without the extra 2 feats, then you're going to want Great Weapon Master and Savage Attacker, 20 Strength, because that's the highest damage output overall. For items, for this character is actually extremely item agnostic. Obviously the elixir builds will need elixirs or some other way to raise your strength to at least 20. You'll wear the best medium armor that you can find, and the only other thing that you want is a decent greatsword. Greatsword is by far the best weapon because it works so well with the great weapon fighting weapon style, so it's incredibly powerful for that. And Savage Attacker also benefits most from rolling extra dice. So between those 2 factors, a greatsword is going to be your best option for a weapon. Other than that, you pretty much want just whatever. The best medium armor you can find. Anything that increases your mobility is good, so the Boots of Speed are pretty good. The Haste Helm is pretty good. The Martial Exertion Gloves, which you get later on. This lets you take some damage to get an additional attack and double your movement speed. That's incredibly powerful for any melee damage dealer, especially one like this, where you're focusing on single large attacks, or where each attack you do does so much extra damage. This character will also wear haste better than just about any other character in the game, so if you have a support character who can cast haste, then Minsc is your guy for putting it on. Alright, my friends, this has been a look at how to build Minsc, the Mad Rashemar Berserker. Also, of course, don't forget to summon Boo. Boo actually is quite good. 20 HP means at this stage in the game he's going to have a little bit of trouble surviving, but he does have 20 AC, so he's fairly hard to hit, and also does actually pretty okay damage just with his normal attack. So this is just a little bit of extra damage that you can get, and that can be helpful for finishing someone off. Minsc can knock them over in one of the many ways that we've talked about, having the ability to knock them over, and then Boo gets advantage on his attack against them, so that's some extra damage. Making use of that powerful effect can be really useful. Alright, my friends, thanks so much for watching this video. Hope that you've enjoyed this look at how to build Minsc in a powerful and yet still loreful way. And as always, if you've enjoyed the video, do please leave a like and leave a comment. That helps a ton with the algorithm. And you can subscribe to my channel for more of this and other Baldur's Gate 3 builds and strategy game videos. Cheers, my friends. GG.